All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the ConTech Exec. My name is Robert Zimmerman, and I'm here today with Albert Bou Fadel, the CEO of SmartBarrel. Albert, thanks for being here this morning. I really do appreciate you taking a little time to just kind of talk with me about stuff. You and I've had a few conversations, and really just wanted to get, I guess, capture everything for posterity here. I like your opinions. I like your products. I just kind of want to share your insights with the folks. So, how are things today?
And first of all, thank you so much, Robert, for having me. It's always a fun conversation. Time seems to fly by. Always a good sign.
Right.
Good. I'm joining you today from our offices in Toronto, so that's
Wow.
exciting.
Very good.
Yeah,
How many offices do you have? You got an office just
to
just two?
Miami.
Miami. Why so far apart? How did that happen?
By chance, it seems that Toronto has an interesting pool in the contact space from sales and from technology, and it's a good kind of hub for talent. And we just like tapped into it, one hire after another, and now we're set up here. So we'll see what's next.
Okay. Just so happens it worked that way. Well, you and I, when we started to talk about doing this podcast, and we could have had a podcast just from our conversation, to prep for the podcast. What we originally got started talking about, and it's something I talk about a lot in either my posts or my other things, is it's all about kind of quality of data. Now, just kind of give everybody a bit of a background. Can you kind of give us a little bit of a background of what SmartBarrel does and kind of how it got started?
Yes, of course. SmartBarrel in many ways is a very, very basic, straightforward, textbook kind of startup story. I personally was in construction for more than 10 years. I was in glass and glazing. That's kind of the world I lived in. Had no business leaving. I love the industry. I still do. I have a soft spot for it. Glass and glazing is way more sophisticated and complicated than people think. I was one of those people who in high school probably would have never guessed in a million years that people pursue windows and doors as a career. But then right after college, I basically dove into it and fell in love with the industry. It's insanely technical. It's insanely complicated. It's basically aesthetically beautiful when you wrap the whole building in glass. It's basically on the 42nd floor. What's keeping you from flying off your couch is really a piece of aluminum and glass. It gives you all this like floor to ceiling experience. So I really dove into it, but as I traveled many different job sites, very fortunately end up working on bigger and bigger sites, I quickly realized that construction doesn't function without workforce. And workforce management is probably the most complicated asset that you can manage in construction. Everything else you can control, from hedging, from budget, from spending, from warehouse, from keeping, from selling, economy of scale. You can buy more, get bulk discounts, yada. But then when it comes to labor, it's a whole other beast. I mean, the humans, every worker is a different person, is different background, different age, different struggles, different emotional state. Yeah. And then when you realize that we're using just basic paper clipboards to manage the most complicated assets, start makes you think. I obviously didn't transfer from basically construction to a technologist. The buffer in between was that I procured a lot of technology solutions. And again, as every story goes, is that a lot of them failed. Some failed miserably, some failed a little bit, but none of them really hit the spot of really understanding how complicated this asset is, how complicated the industry is. And probably a bit of luck and a bit of naivety and a bit of like not knowing what I'm doing, I decided to basically tackle this problem.
No risk, no reward, right?
Exactly.
I get you.
So because of the oversimplifying the problem at a time and testing a lot of solutions that I know how they fail, the natural progression was for me to build like a hardware product, to basically build a solution, timekeeping solution, to basically start at the most important and critical point in the whole process, is basically tracking the entry and the time buckets of the workers, because this is what directly correlates with payroll. And I needed the most accurate and real-time information I could get, so every workflow I need to build on top of it needs to stem from my real-time attendance. And there was no other way to build it without compromising the level of accuracy, without having to build basically a hardware solution. And then we dove into it. So we started by building a hardware time clock, and then we started by building a mobile app and whole web application, whole suite, all work together to basically help you streamline your whole workforce management and basically your timekeeping. But throughout the product, the number one common denominator is we should never, never lose on the integrity and the value of the data. And this has been the continuous struggle and what basically made the product as successful as it is.
Right. Yeah, it's a big deal. You always people talk about, buddy punching, and they talk about ghost employees, and they talk about just the absolute inaccuracy, 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, writing it in on a piece of paper, signing off on a piece of paper. You never know. There is no digital connection. There is no, I guess, it was always unfettered access to whatever. I had one guy, superintendent, put it to me like this: when you have a system like that, it's like you basically just giving them an open checkbook to kind of put in whatever they feel like, in hopes that they don't get caught. But, most likely they don't, because it's very, very difficult, especially if you have a large operation where you've got multiple crews in multiple locations. It's very, very difficult to monitor that flow of information to see whether it's accurate. And you've actually been quoted as accurate data beats big data, and the accuracy more valuable than collecting just numbers. I want you to kind of go into that a little bit, because this is obviously the system that you've developed has been based around that.
Yeah, I actually also want to touch on something you just mentioned, and we did a while back kind of like a light marketing campaign that I don't know if it was successful by all means, because I don't know if a lot of people resonated with the message, and a lot of people were basically frustrated from that messaging. There's a big so first of all, fraud in construction is like real malicious fraud is way smaller than people think, right? Really, people are being very malicious, but it's damaging a lot. This is why it gets a lot of, like everything, right? Like you don't have, majority of the people are not murderers, majority of the people are not serial killers, but even the small, they create so much damage that they get this like huge stigma. So this is the same thing in construction. I genuinely believe one of the most hardworking, honest people ever, are like every other industry than in construction. It's just that there's a slight shift of like a misconception, and this might be diving into kind of a bit of a philosophical conversation, right? When you have a paper clipboard where the worker walks in and can type 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and clock themselves on a 12-hour shift, and when everyone else is also doing it, why would you be the one who puts 6 to 4:30? Why would you be the one that really wants to be? And remember, this is the worker who is probably living maybe paycheck to paycheck, maybe a bit better, versus a company that seamlessly making millions and millions of dollars. So it's very easy as an employee or as a human to justify this as not a fraud, as like, I'm causing no harm, right? So it's more like the lack of systems are not meant to catch the intruders. It's more so to kind of like stop this promotion of easy giveaway money, right? So there's a whole slogan we tried to like launch couple of I think couple of years ago now. Is it time theft or is it time gift? When you have no timekeeping solution, right? Like, is it really theft or just saying, hey, like if you have a safe with gold and you have no lock on the door, are you gifting the gold? Are people stealing from you the gold? So there is a bit of accountability when it comes to this kind of weird expectations of like everyone should be honest, and
Yeah,
people have bad weeks, people have
there's
expenses.
there's an integrity factor that everybody wants to be able to figure in. It's like, have
Yeah,
some integrity, put in the time, and they feel like, most company owners, I know this for a fact, I did the very, very same thing as a company owner. My foreman in the field, I would hold him accountable for making sure everybody, you know, got their proper time in, right? I knew there was some fluff in there, which most company owners do. So you've got that integrity factor where you're like, I need to be able to trust you. So I'm giving you, like you said, I'm giving you a gift, or I'm giving you,
yeah, but it's also not fair for the foreigner or the super to be tasked with this. If you think about it, it's really a very horrible. I wore that hat, and it's not a good hat, right? Because you're torn. If you want to be this very strict, by the book, by the rule manager who's like nickel and diming the workers, and at the same time be their like manager and their friend and like their this. It's conflicting because one guy says, "Hey, listen, I have to bounce at 1. Can you like clock me out 3:30?" Well, if you say yes, don't worry, I got you. Well, it's an open invitation to everyone, and it's a shit show. And if you say no, you're very strict, and it's like, hey, can you make an exception? It's a clipboard, and you just have the pen. Just do it. You know what I mean? So you're always putting this like foreman, who is, by the way, not an HR trained, not a human management trained, like they're workers who just went up the ladder. So it's really an unfair ask, to be honest. Like it's unfair ask to like have them wing those decisions all day, all night. And again, and I'm assuming there's no fraud, no malicious intent, nothing, but they do it once. Now the 5 others come and say, hey, you hooked him up last week, hook me up. Now it opens kind of form. Now they're happy that you hooked them up. So you think you're winning loyalty, but that's opening a kind of form in terms of integrity. So they're always living in that kind of conflict. And usually, and I say this all day, all night, like a very good solid foreman adores when timekeeping is off their plate. Like
Yeah.
they love it. They're like, man, take this shit off of me. Have a system handle it. I don't
Yes.
want to deal with this. I don't want to be the one deciding.
I literally had folks say that to me just a few months back. They're like, if we didn't have to do anything, we would be much happier on this end of the spectrum, simply because it is, like you say, it's a conflict. It's a kind of a conflict of interest for them. They're not HR people. They're not trained in HR. They're not trained in, having to deal with all that kind of stuff. Their whole job is really, I want to get you guys on this job to get this work done.
Yep.
So I see where you're coming from there.
So this has been like a big part of like how we develop the product from the ground up, is basically have the contractor as a whole, we're going from like C-suite all the way down to the foreman and the worker, delegate the timekeeping to this platform, right? So delegate the whole stress, the process, the compliance, the detection of fraud, the detection of this, adjusting the thing. So how can we make each, we call them stakeholders, how we can make each stakeholder's life a bit better based on their own incentives. What a PM cares for on a job site has nothing to do with what a timekeeper cares for a job site. It's also not necessarily the same for the worker cares for timekeeping. So how can we service each stakeholder in a module or a service or a feature or an experience that basically aligns with their incentives? And this is way, way easier said than done.
Yes. Yeah. Aligning, because it gets into so you can't have both ways, right? You can't have this kind of lackadaisical, the foreman's kind of, oh, we'll throw in some time here for you. Yeah, I got you, buddy. Right. And then you also can't have the strict, well, you're 1 minute late, that's how I came up through the industry. It was, if you weren't 10 minutes early, you're already
You're
late.
late.
That's in the industry. From what I'm hearing, I don't know if it's everybody, right? But from folks that I've talked with, the industry's changed. It's like folks don't show up 10 minutes early. There is not that dedication, I'll say, to the craft. They show up at 7 and then they've got an hour's worth of, whether it's toolbox talk, getting things prepped, safety talk, getting stretched out, those kind of things. There's all of that that's involved that you basically miss an hour of productivity. So it's not the same. But then you have a system like this where, biometric facial, those types of things. And then they start to complain about, their privacy, or they feel like it's Big Brother watching them.
Yeah, there's 2 things here. There's 2 big things here. One is insanely common. Insanely common is everybody wants change, but nobody wants to change. I mean, it's been insane. If you speak to anyone, do you want better career, better data, prosperity, blah, blah, blah? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, well, we have to implement 1, 2, 3 system. And like, well, I don't want to do anything different. So this is across the board. I mean, from presidents down to workers, it's insane. Everybody wants enhancement, but for free. Like the minute you introduce any system or anything, it like hell breaks loose. I think a lot of it is from this, like the privacy. I think there's a bit of like more noise about it. We don't experience it nearly as much as you think we do. Like it's insane. Like people are usually love it. They love system. They just don't like change. Like once you introduce change, it's like, okay, is it gonna hurt me? Is it gonna be better for me? I'm gonna do more work, less work. Like I don't like it. I'm used to like this comfort that I had before.
Well, most of the time, change involves more work, right? every time. And it's always more work until it's not more work,
It's
right?
less work. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more work to get you to less work, which I always found kind of odd. It's like, well, okay, I get it. You're strapped for time. You already feel like you're overloaded, especially with whatever labor shortages you have, whatever staffing shortages you have for the positions that these folks are in. But yeah, they want the change, but then they realize, oh, by the way, this smells a lot like a full-time job, you know, and nobody wants at it. And so again, yeah, it's
Yeah.
so conflicting.
One of the biggest kind of feedback loops that we get is like we have a whole page internally of like supers, foremen, PMs, timekeepers that they're literally just their feedback like, oh my God, that was actually really easy. Oh my God, that was actually easier than it. Because every salesperson will like preach how easy and seamless and da da da. But then they come to the field and it's like a brutal like 6-month implementation.
Mhm.
Because we built it field first in mind, it's really insanely intuitive to deploy. So we've been getting a lot of this feedback saying, oh my, that was actually way easier than I thought. And I mean, it speaks a lot when you have a foreman saying this or a superintendent who basically like hates tech more than anything on earth and be like, oh, that's actually was pretty cool. That was really seamless. So we
Right. Well, you're taking a lot off of their plate, especially for that first thing in the morning kind of thing. Um, and I always look at that too. And we had started talking about this as you've been on both sides of the business. I've been on both sides of the business. You've got the software or technology providers side. We've kind of touched on this. Hey, you guys want change? We've got this, right? Uh, How do you like that? How would this help you effective make your company better? And then they're like, oh, it would be great, but we don't. It's going to be really
this
really difficult. So then you have the construction side of perspective. And so I kind of wanted to kind of delve into that because we're kind of just on that cusp of, you've got software providers, you've got technology out there right now that, a lot of claims, a lot of, hey, we can do all this, but then there's, as you said, there's 6 months worth of implementation. There's, the difficulties of implementation. Kind of tell me what you've experienced in that, because you don't just, collect bifacial information. It expands from there. So what's your
of
experience
course.
with that?
Of course, in order to be a successful solution, you want to plug in into their workflows, right? So the contractor has this way of doing things, right? Inefficient, broken, good enough, works, doesn't work, doesn't matter. The reasons might vary. Some people reach out because their system is fully broken. They're like, this makes no sense. Some is pure optimization. They're like, they know if I don't grow, I die, and I just want to go to the next level, help me get there. And as a technology provider, the biggest misconception is you want to be innovative, disruptive, blah, 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 which are the terminologies that like drive me a bit nuts. But also the main secret is to plug in uh, into a working workflow in that sense that you're providing the outputs that they always wanted with the least amount of input effort that they're putting in. And this is what makes it successful. You don't want to come and reinvent the wheel. You don't want to come to a contractor and say, oh, you've been doing this A, B, C, D. Let me show you X, Y, Z. And be like, holy shit, I have to reinvent. So what we've done really well is we understood where we really fit. It's like, the story when you're putting the star and the star and the hole and the, like, where can we fit in to where we're skipping 7, 8 steps, but the output is exactly what they wanted. The input, because we live in construction, not just Farbera, like a lot of tools that live in the construction phase, they live in after the pre-construction. So there's a lot of inheritance that you could not control, and you live also post-construction. So we live in a module where we have to deliver stuff for the post-construction, the closing of the project, the closing of the contract, da da da. We are living in the construction where we can make adjustments and tweaks. But this input and pre-construction, the cost coding, the budget, the way they ramp up their workers, the way they mobilize the jobs, I have no input to this. So I can't come and disrupt this process. I have to inherit what ERP used. Okay, I'll work with it. How do you budget your job? Fine, I'll work with it. How do you bulk your workers? Is it by crew? Is it by department? I'll accept it. This is where I'm going to be stiff. I'm going to say, listen, like this is great, but let me tell you how we should do it better. Then whatever output you want, makes or doesn't make sense, doesn't matter. I'm going to give it to you. And this is basically the struggle that startups our size deal with it, and companies as big as Procore also struggle with it. Is that how can you be an industry standard while being flexible enough to mold every contractor's uh, unique workflow, especially in an industry that is insanely non-standardized? You can speak with $100 million Northeast electrical contractor, 500 workers, yada yada, and then literally have 10 different processes, like from A to Z. We bid differently, we procure differently, the types of job we do are differently, and on paper they're identical. And this is the biggest challenge.
So across the board, technology has this problem with construction and always has. One of the top 10 things that we talk about, and it'll really be it becomes even more obvious in what I say the age of AI, because I don't care what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're using an AI functionality or not. If you want to measure something, right? Whatever it is, I don't care if you're trying to measure commonalities in RFIs. I don't care if you're trying to measure time in hours. Whatever you're trying to measure, there has to be some standardization. They're having the same thing with Open BIM when they start to talk about terminology inside of a BIM process, right? One company over here calls it this. One company over here calls it this, whether it's a staircase or whether it's a metal staircase that's designed, whatever that is, the terminology is not the same. And I think this is the continuous problem that we're going to be seeing across the board with construction when it comes to technology and how it applies to construction, because there is no standard, there's no SOP that everybody follows.
Yeah. And this is going to be amplified in AI. And this is why AI is very, very interesting for construction. I think AI has put a humongous jumbo spotlight on data quality and data integrity. Because what AI does is that it's this like humongous monster that whatever you feed it, it does magic with it. But what people are realizing, you feed it shit, it gives you magical shit, but it's still shit, right? It's not gonna clean your data. It's not gonna guess. It's really and a
Yeah,
lot of
it's you're sniffing unicorn farts,
exactly,
basically.
exactly, 100%. And people are sitting and they're saying, "Oh, like this is insane," because prior to that, the industry was way more resistive to tech in many ways. But ChatGPT blew everyone's mind, right? So ChatGPT was this kind of like phenomenon that basically woke everyone to be like, "Oh my God, like this technology can do so much outside rewriting my email." Can it read the PDF drawing? Can it find me how many doors we have? And then the companies like Toggle AI and others who've been spearheading this AI for a while, Document Crunch, whatnot, it's being accentuated. But very quickly, people are realizing, okay, if my drawings have 6 different terminology for door, while AI is puking doors, it's like lost. And then this is misconcept number one. Misconcept number two is I think they go hand in hand. They might seem like very unlinked points. Walk with me through this. The industry has been notoriously known for tight margins, but they're big ticket items. So I think a lot of people struggle with the fact that you might be working on a $10 million project, but half point or 1% or 1.5% might be your profit margin. Meaning, even though it's a $10 million contract, really you have to be very, very careful in every dollar you spend, because one oopsie can tip you down into the negative,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Why am I saying all this? So
Yeah.
the reason why I'm emphasizing on all this is that the accuracy of the information is what makes or breaks this industry. If your quantity takeoff is off by a tiny bit, bye Lulu. If your labor budget is off by a bit, bye Lulu. If your change orders are not properly detected, submitted in time, bye Lulu. Your 1.5 margin becomes a minus 0.8 in like 3 weeks. So now you have AI sitting on top of it, and everyone's trying to shove it into like, help me get better control or help me get better margin. And then they're quickly realizing that it can do amazing. It can do microsecond takeoffs. It can be crawling huge data sets in a fraction of the time. It can look up your documentation. It can give you analysis on your worker. It can predict where you're going, yada, yada. All contingent on real fucking accurate data. That's it.
Yeah.
It's a tiny contingency. But
Yeah.
if you
Well,
don't have it, bye bye.
so yeah, and I agree. Like look at the way you and I are probably closer to the same age. We were kind of grew up in that age where you had a set of prints, right? That
Yeah.
you would walk onto the job site with. You had a set of prints. You'd be looking at the set of prints, and all of a sudden there's this little gray area, right? It kind of like this. You kind of need to make this up in the field. I get those all the time. My RFIs, the things that I would be, calling back to the engineers and the architects for would be like, hey, what's all this? Did you guys just not finish?
Yeah.
Those types
What
of things.
happened?
Yeah, what happened? Well, that's for you to figure out. We didn't. And what it came down to, I think to your point, was those tight margins, right? The ownership had, well, I want you to spend, I'm going to pay for 30 hours or 40 hours worth of work on this set of drawings, or this set of engineering specs, and that's all I'm paying for. And so guess what? The engineers and the architects, that's what you get. You get 30 to 40 hours worth of drawings. It is a quote unquote complete set with the small print, and the bottom says arrows and emissions. By the way, if I've omitted anything, if I've missed anything,
It's on you.
yeah, call me. We'll figure it out. But you know, I'm not responsible
Yeah.
because something's missing. Well, now think about that. Think about, again, AI or I don't care, even if it's not AI or whatever it is, whatever research tool you're using, even if it's just a guy that's an estimator who, again, could miss something just because it's not even there or it was wrong. They boilerplated it. I've seen that before where they put a boilerplate detail on the wrong, the wrong call out. So guess what? That amplifies that same situation. If you're giving it bad data, AI is looking into it, going, okay, wow, this is what we have. I'm just pulling the information right off here because this is what I recognize. And then all of a sudden, like you said, I've got 10 more doors than I thought I had. Do I have the 10 doors or do I not have the 10 doors? And who's checking on that? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, you're absolutely spot on. And it's, like the whole budget thing is people don't realize how much more bigger of a problem it is and how much now it's even more challenging to get more systems in place that are in the lack of budget. I remember I was in the era where BIM wasn't invented. BIM existed way before me, but like when BIM was starting to go mainstream. And there was a moment maybe 15 years ago now, say 15, 18 years ago now, where it made no sense to renovate a North Carolina Raleigh apartment without BIM. Like it made no sense. Like why can we can coordinate the whole thing digitally, or where the sprinkler is gonna hit the window, where the anchor bolt is gonna hit a PT cable. Like you can have everything down to the T, but somehow we're still heavily on 2D. And the gap between the two is a very simple word called budget. Nothing else. Technical skills there. There are a dime a dozen BIM modelers. The software is getting more and more powerful by the minute. It's phenomenal what you can do with this. It's a phenomenal coordination tool. 2D drawings should not, in theory, exist. I'm not talking about VR headset where you're dancing around like a nut job on a job site. I'm talking about just opening your laptop, see a BIM model, and say, okay, give me the sequence. Where is my MEP? Where's my drywall? And keep maintaining it throughout the job to where it becomes as built. I don't understand how this is not by law a requirement.
Well,
Genuinely don't understand.
you're not the only one who says that. I went to MEP conference back in January, and you know, their whole the whole thing is about BIM, VDC, trying to get people to understand like this is it's not a design tool, right? It's an information tool. It is actually the host of information for the whole job right there. But yet your subcontractors don't have access to it either because they're not given access or they don't have the programs to run it, or they don't have the training, they have however that is. But you've got a whole resource of information there, but yet it doesn't get disseminated to all the players in the field. It used to be the same thing with Procore. I had Procore as a general contractor. The ownership had Procore, and so it was like, which Procore do you want to use? You want to use mine? You want to use yours? You have to have a common. You have to have that one source of truth, and BIM is truly should be that one source of truth where it says, hey, by the way, for this project, this is the Bible. This is
Yeah,
it.
yeah, it makes absolute no sense. It's not where it should be. Especially now with AI. I mean, the magic you can do, but the secret with BIM, like everything else, you cannot use BIM as a design tool because by the time the job is done, it's a suggestion of what the job is. The as builts are the secret sauce. If you finish the job and your BIM is updated to the last screw bolted in, you have a time capsule of a digital. You can unwrap drywall, see where the beam was. I mean, it's insane for maintenance, for the life of the building, for the quality of the building, for enhancing the next development project you want to do, and the third, understand the mistakes. Where was the design? Where did we end up? I mean, the industry can leap from an architecture standpoint, from an engineering design standpoint, from a construction sequences scheduling. I mean, can leap, and we have the tool. The technology exists, and now you throw in some LLM and AI into it, where it can guess and project and forecast. But it's a budget. It's budget. Like one out of one conversation said, you have the model? Nope, we don't have the budget for it. And it's like, okay, because if they add 70, 80, 100, $200,000 into their line item, they know they're going to lose the bid. Like it's just not chance. Like nobody's going to accept this much differentiation. And if 2D works, then 2D works. Why would I be the one who's trying to innovate here? Unless it becomes like a requirement. And I think this is enough. It goes back to the lack of standardization, right? There's no like benchmark. There's no like baseline, whether any level, whether it's an association or an organization or a firm or a city or a council, anything that says this is the bar, and you cannot work under this bar, but you will be recognized only when you meet this bar. It doesn't exist.
So
It's nothing.
I was reading an article. I think it was something about McKinsey had put something out, but it's talking about capital projects. Large
Yeah.
budget projects where they're going to start requiring things like predictability analysis in the pre-construction phase, and they're going to start requiring all these things simply because there have been so many of these capital projects that have gone up,
Yeah,
that
it
are
is.
just,
Yeah.
they're out of budget, they're out of schedule.
Always.
Yeah, and so most of these capital projects actually revolve around energy grid types of things, the data centers that are going to have to go up to actually run any expansion of AI. Also, put in there, I would say, any of the water projects that are going to be needed, because that's going to be a huge part of this. But I think you're right in when you say that is it's always about budget. And when I think about mid-level, contractors, or contractors, or even large scale contractors that are wanting to move into these spaces where they're either a subcontractor on a capital project job, well, guess what they're going to have, right? They're going to have one. They're going to have a good data structure in order to move into this
Yeah. Yeah.
realm for predictability, because they have to know where to go get their data. Two, they're going to have the technology stack that delivers the type of information that these guys are going to be requiring at that level. If you want to go out and you want to go bid in on a $20 billion, data center project, or those types of things, guess what? You're going to have to bring the receipts for that. You're going to have the technology stack that can handle that, and you're going to have the coordination for that. So we've covered a lot of ground here this morning. I know that, but like I said, I'm glad we got a chance to talk again. I knew we'd do well with it. Just kind of, in wrapping this up, we've talked about a lot of bad habits. Do you think that the budget stipulation and bad budget is the big bad habit that if you could snap your fingers, you'd fix it? Do you think that would be it?
Aye, aye, aye. I would need way too many snapping fingers at the same time.
Right.
I don't know if there's only one. I think a mindset shift would be kind of important, and we're seeing it now. If I have like kind of like one wish is really having internal meetings where people take two steps back and really decide on evaluating their internal uh, data quality. I think I would really I cannot stress this enough. I don't think there's a lot of meetings going around this. I think people go the finance route, the operation route, the risk route, the compliance route, or the IT route, and how secure and unsecure we are, which is great. But I think at every leadership level, there should be a line item that says, hey, can we do a 1 month audit of our data quality? Everything, every invoice, every number we share on a Power BI dashboard on the screen, can we score it? Can we give it kind of like an accuracy ratio? How much is it being guessed? How much is it not? And then once you have this kind of parameter, I think it will give you a way better idea of where you have gaps in how we should tighten it up. You'd be surprised how much manual processes, if you really dive into them, like, okay, there's like 7 layers of like guesstimate. So this is kind of like very dangerous if we're building or our future bidding based on those numbers and 30% of those numbers are guesstimated, then holy shit, let's get this to like 10% or 5%. I think this is a phenomenal exercise that you can be a $10 million contractor or a $1 billion contractor. You need this exercise across the board.
Yeah, I agree with you. Again, I think figuring out the quality of your data, getting a benchmark, somewhere to start from. And I know we're short on time here today, just for this next one, but I think, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Get yourself a benchmark that you can start from. I promise you, contractors out there, and I'm sure Albert will agree, you're not going to like what you see when you start really looking at your numbers, right? When you start looking at the data. But it is a place to start from where you can start to improve, right?
Yeah,
And
understand.
that's just it. And I think Smart Barrel is a good product for those of you out there looking. I think it's a good product. It could be a great place to start for some folks as well. Albert, thank you for your time today. I really do appreciate it. Hopefully, we can do this again sometime. Talk more about this. Kind of see what you've seen out there in the field. Again, I just talk to people these days. I get a lot of, so I'm not boots on the ground anymore, and so it's always interesting to kind of hear what's really going on out there.
Yeah, awesome. No, thank you so much. As always, a lot of fun. It's one of those conversations that you cannot relate to it unless you're an insider. It doesn't kind of 100% translate to many other industries. At SmartBarrel, we're basically trying. We're not necessarily 100% there yet, but we're always trying to basically better the industry as much as possible, whether it's at the worker level, super performer, all the way up, providing better data, better insights, have better management. It's a very long road ahead. That's our mission. So we're dedicated to it. We'll see where it takes us.
Well, good. Well, we need more people like that are dedicated to improving the process, because we certainly in the construction industry could use all the help that we can get. That's for sure. Well, thank you so much again, and we'll be in touch. I'll talk to you all soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, same here.
Have a good
Thank you,
day.
Robert. Bye-bye.